21st century is where everything changes, and Torchwood, as always, is ready. Welcome back to another Big Finish review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the most recent releases from the Torchwood main range. This time round, Dissected, as written by Tim Foley, featuring the one and only Eve Myles as Gwen Cooper, alongside Freema Agyeman as Martha Jones, of course the 10th Doctor's companion from Series 3, who did also go on to briefly appear within Torchwood, as well as of course Doctor Who Series 4. Now this is a release that I imagine will be generating quite a lot of interest from Doctor Who fans, because it is the first ever Big Finish audio drama release to feature Freema Agyeman as Martha, hopefully the beginning of a number of releases that we may see in the future. I was generally really intrigued by this story and simply just wanted to give it a go. Of course, if you are a regular viewer of these Big Finish reviews, you will know that I don't tend to review the Torchwood main range. The only Torchwood series that I'm actually dedicated to listening to is the Torchwood 1 mini-series, of course a prequel to new series Torchwood, and I briefly dip in and out of the Torchwood main range. However, most of the time I don't review them. In the later half of 2019 I did of course review Torchwood Smashed, once again featuring Eve Myles, and when I seen that this release was coming out I was intrigued by it. I had a spare hour and I simply wanted a little bit of entertainment, and this episode certainly gave me that. So I thought, hey, why not review it? It's a bonus little Big Finish review, which is the beauty of this series. Every single time that I've dipped into the Big Finish main range, I've came out of the other side of the Torchwood releases just generally feeling satisfied with what I've just listened to. They are really lovely and small, accessible, and something of which that I do definitely recommend to Torchwood fans who are looking to make that leap into Torchwood in audio format. Of course, as per usual, in the description below there will be the link to go and buy this release from the Big Finish website. It is currently out now. The physical CD is $9.99 and the download is around $7.99, so considerably cheap compared to other Torchwood releases such as the ongoing series and of course other Doctor Who Big Finish box sets are released. The trailer is also available to watch on the Big Finish website, as well as all your usual story information, and of course the lovely looking cover art for this release as well. It's just nice to see Martha Jones in Big Finish for the first ever time, and no doubt there will be possibly her return in the future, who knows. So as I was mentioning earlier, what I love about the Torchwood main range is simply just how accessible it is as a series. Every single release that I've listened to so far I've thoroughly enjoyed for many different ways. Of course, as per usual, due to Torchwood being a more adult series, of course for teenagers and adults I suppose, there is a little bit of language in there, along with a few more gruesome things that you would normally not come to expect within Doctor Who, so this is a release for adult listeners as opposed to younger Doctor Who fans. It is nice to have that within Torchwood on audio, because I think there is something brilliant about the audio drama format and more adult material, especially when it comes to sci-fi, especially within the context of this story where we have the pretty much autopsy theme running all the way throughout the story's duration. We get to see them doing the dissecting of the body and the different components of the body itself, and overall we have a few adult themes in there as well, relating to the relationship between Gwen and Martha. Overall it's a great character piece, and something of which that I kind of went into not really having any expectations other than the curiosity of having Freema Agyeman returning as Martha, and I came out the other side simply happy at what I just listened to. It's a nice piece that has a lot of detail and a lot of layers, and considering that this is only a two-hander with two members on the cast, it flows incredibly well, and there wasn't really a moment in the script where I faded out. I followed the story, I followed the narrative, and generally I was quite engrossed within the plot itself. I was quite in fact sad when it ended. It went incredibly quickly and certainly didn't feel like 50 minutes. So talking about Eve Myles as Gwen Cooper, of course in the back end of 2019, as I said, I did review Smashed, and there is just something brilliant about Eve Myles on audio. She's such an entertaining actress. I think that her way of acting is both serious, quite realistic, but also at the same time brilliantly funny. The way that Eve can contribute her comedy into Gwen as a character, I do sometimes question how much of Gwen is Eve and how much of Eve is Gwen, because there does seem to be quite a balance between the two. And I think that when she's reading the audio dramas, it just feels natural, especially when it came to Smashed. The fact that she was intoxicated throughout the vast majority of the story's duration, it felt funny, even though that story did have a darker subplot, but also at the same time it was believable. I think that Eve put such a brilliant emotion into the character, which especially in this story where we get to see a few uncomfortable scenes between Martha and Gwen, they were handled incredibly well, and likewise for Freema Agyeman as well. I wasn't necessarily expecting much. That's not because I think that Freema is a bad actress or anything like that. I simply just thought, I don't think she's done audio before. It might take a little bit of getting used to, very much like I felt for Billie Piper and Catherine Tate. However, she slipped back into the role effortlessly. It felt, once again, incredibly natural, considering that both actors in this release recorded apart from each other. The conversations flowed incredibly well, and overall it was a nice piece of development for both characters as a whole, but also the Torchwood team, considering that oddly they are not present. So as the title suggests for this episode, we do have the dissection of a body basically and an autopsy report trying to figure out how this person has died because a spaceship has crashed on Earth. UNIT have gone to discover the crash site, and naturally UNIT being a little bit clumsy, we have Torchwood coming along and discovering a dead body remain that has been left, and Gwen as a result has taken this to UNIT in order to get a little bit of information about the dead body that they've left behind. And a continuous theme throughout this release is kind of the balance and comparison between the bodies of Torchwood and UNIT, which is interesting given the context of current new series Doctor Who, where both of these bodies are now apparently no longer a thing, which we kind of get to see Martha weighing up the pros and cons of both, realising that both of them have flaws, and she kind of sees Torchwood's approach as rather amateur and aggressive in a way, kind of having alien tech that's came to Earth and them grabbing it and kind of essentially experimenting with it. Of course, as we did see throughout the vast majority of Torchwood on TV, as well as its brief cameos within Doctor Who itself. Then likewise we have Gwen kind of weighing up the pros and cons of UNIT, saying that they are quite clumsy at times and also a little bit boring. They're kind of more obsessed with paperwork, which I can understand both arguments, but it's nice to see that argument running throughout almost the entirety of this story. And then at parts it does get a little bit personal. I won't mention what actually goes on within the narrative itself and the references that are made, but it is nice to see that we're having, especially within a 1 hour drama, so much development between what we've seen on screen within Torchwood and Doctor Who and expanding upon that, kind of having Martha being developed on after she has departed from being with the Doctor, because her life doesn't just stop after she's been with the Doctor, she's gone on and done further things. It's nice to kind of see Big Finish suggesting that, which is something that is also referred to within the behind the scenes. Tim Foley's way of writing is simply very intriguing, and I think that he deserves a lot of credit for what he's managed to achieve throughout the plot of this story, because in reality there's not that much going on. We have them trying to work out the path of events when it comes to this dead body that has ended up on the slab, and we have them having conversations over the body, and there is this whole element of mystery surrounding the entire plot. And I think the way that he manages to pair the mystery of this corpse as well as the emotional human side, such as what's gone on between Martha and Gwen in their separate lives beyond when they last met, which was a number of years ago, and kind of the changes between Torchwood and UNIT across that time. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of tension, but also at the same time emotions are almost running high, and Tim Foley, accompanied with Freema as well as Eve, manages to create a really emotional but also relatable script. And finally, to end off this review, a little bit of additional behind the scenes credit. Of course, we had Scott Handcock directing and script editing, along with James Goss, of course, being the producer, and music as composed by Blair Mowat, all of which worked incredibly well together. There's a scene at the very beginning which is some of the best use of audio that I've seen in quite a while, in fact, on Big Finish, and a lovely way to start the story, where we have this environment that is created as if that you, as the listener, are the person within the body bag waiting to be opened up, and we have a little brief conversation and exchange between Martha and Gwen as they meet for the first time in a while, and then after a few minutes they unzip the bag and everything becomes a little bit clearer and more crisp in the sound design itself. Overall, it's a lovely and intriguing way to start the story. It sets up the environment of the story in a really effective manner, but also at the same time highlights how claustrophobic and clinical the environment of this story is. And that is my review of Torchwood Dissected as written by Tim Foley. Overall, a rather entertaining story, but also at the same time does feature those usual adult elements that you would come to expect from Torchwood. It's a really lovely drama, and something of which that I'm continuously now starting to see with the Torchwood main range, where within that 50-minute duration, they simply do so much with the plot to make it certainly worthwhile. So if you are a Torchwood fan, I certainly recommend picking up this release, either the physical or the download version. And if you are a fan of Martha as well, this is a definite must for you to kind of find out what has happened since she's departed from the Doctor, as it raises a few questions, and who knows, maybe this is just the opening chapter of more releases to come in the future. I'm only speculating, but it's Big Finish, so you never know. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any questions about this release, then please do feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and I will try my best to answer them at some point in the near future. And also, if you are a regular listener to the Torchwood Big Finish main range, please do leave in the comments section a few titles that you have enjoyed over the past few years of the main range being around, some of the highlights that you've personally enjoyed listening to, and I may check them out in the future because I'm thoroughly enjoying my venture into the Torchwood main range over the past few months, and I want to listen to more in the future. So yeah, please do leave your top releases, and I may get around to listening to them at some point if I get enough hours in the day, which sadly at the minute I seem to have very little of. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.